should only be at the state level. Now let me tell you about my favorite candidate. My favorite candidate is Governor Mitt Romney. Now, Governor Mitt Romney is accused by conservatives and some other organizations of abandoning his conservative principles because of Romney Care. I ask you, which kind of a president as a conservative would you rather have? One who rejected the 9th and 10th Amendments, or one that said, I'm absolutely opposed to federal, centralized health care management, but the state of my state made a choice, and we made a decision, but we didn't impose Romney Care on Nebraska. He believes in states' rights. That is a fundamental principle of constitutional government. And so, I don't have to forgive him, but maybe you need to forgive him, if he's our nominee particularly, and I hope he is, because he practiced a first principle. Now, I don't agree with Romney Care, but I certainly agree with him that it should not be Obamacare. And that's the first principle. So he's telling us how he thinks when he addresses issues. What he would embrace in the federal central system versus what he would preserve and protect for the states and or the people. So he's my favorite candidate, has been, and I wanted to talk about him for just a minute. Secondly, I want to talk about the second favorite candidate, that's me. You may know that I'm a candidate for election to our state university board of regents, District 8, which is simply 66th Street, mostly all the rest of Douglas County. So for those of you who aren't right from this area, that's the district. I'm 70 years old and have had the privilege of being in public life for about a third of my days, and in private sector business and industry for 2/3 of my days. And as I look forward to what I can contribute, and maybe we together can contribute, I thought, well, kids, affordable quality education, and a university that will partner with the private sector to create the jobs of the future to keep our kids here after we get them educated. Pretty simple. And I'm excited about that. And it's a 6-year term. It's a nonpartisan in its style on the ballot. There are 4 in my district race. The top 2 will go forward to the November election. I hope to get that opportunity to put vision and energy into my project-oriented ideas. I worked in an accounting firm as well as being a lawyer, so I can read a balance sheet. And I think that $2.4 billion business, this is the largest business in our state, needs somebody that can read a balance sheet, don't you? And so that's what I hope, if you have friends in that district or live there, you will consider this primary and general election. So I've said my piece. Fundamental liberty comes from constitutional government. Constitutional government is already clear, and all we need to do is to work hard for candidates and causes that perpetuate liberty and capitalism. Thank you very much. Happy to take some questions. Hope I stirred the pot a little bit. John?
When I went to service, I swore to uphold the Constitution and also obey the Commander-in-Chief. Late, I'm beginning to think this thing could be in conflict. Where does the military stand? Do they have to make a decision, or could they have to make a decision? If worse came to worse.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I am a real believer in this country's essential goodness. And at the end of the day, well, not maybe every election, you know, as a Republican conservative, when I go to the ballot box, John, there are people on that ballot that are conservative and maybe styling themselves conservative. That if you took time to really look, they aren't, or they're neither. But my party doesn't always have all the best people that are always right on every issue on that specific election day every time. It's just the way it is. So you have to make a judgment then sometimes, and you have to make a comparative choice. I don't think the American public, if we had an even more left-wing president than we have now in the White House, would ever want the military to violate that sacred separation, and there would just be another election that would be the rallying point, or a Richard Nixon has to resign from office. That, to me, would seem to be the more likely outcome, even when you read that the military is going to kick somebody out because on that sergeant's first, on his private time, he criticized the president on his own personal computer and his own personal website. I thought that was I think that's maybe what you had in mind when you read that story, and I think that's a mistake on the part of the military. I think that damages the military's view of free speech and free activity. You have to remember there's a fine line. I respect the office of president, and I certainly don't have negative personal feelings toward Barack Obama. I have fundamental, 180-degree opposite views on just about every subject that is fundamental to our country's governance. And will be active as I can. I want you to energize your mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, nieces, nephews, aunts, everybody, not just here at home, but all across this country in this next election. Don't think you just have to participate and act locally. You've got a big responsibility here. 20 million Tea Party Patriot members need encouragement as well, let alone all of their friends and relatives. And with this electronic world and with your emails and with our cell phones, we can affect the thinking and the vote outcomes in this election, not just out of Nebraska, but all across this country. But let's never worry about it, John. Let's never think in terms of our country getting to such a low point that we would ever have the military create a coup d'etat and throw out the president of the United States. It would be the end of democracy as we know it. Questions? Yes.
I attended Kansas University at about $36 a credit hour. I went through college for less than $8,000. Nowadays, you need $40,000, $50,000. But what they teach at the universities now is not constitutional. Some of the liberals that coming into our students and their ideas and so forth. What are you willing to do to change that?
Well, one of the things that will change it is to get people like me elected to the governing board. With all due respect, whether it's me or someone else, make sure that the people we elect share your point of view. For example, he can set a bomb off and no one would get hurt. In many of the buildings that have lots of empty classrooms from 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon until the next morning. So we're building new buildings all the time instead of using the space we've got. In my private world, we use ourselves up to full capacity, and there's not another inch of room before we build a new office. And I think that this business of just lots of money and taxpayers' money going into space is really not utilized efficiently. Is one of the places I'm going to really look at how you keep that tuition cost down. I don't propose to be, if I'm privileged to be a regent, capable of turning back the clock and getting back to $8,000 a year. But the escalation in salary against paying attention to teaching physics and not teaching why Barack Obama should be reelected in the college classroom is a step too far, even with respect to academic freedom. So I'm going to be very insistent upon quality teaching and education, and that particular commentary might be appropriate in a political science class in an appropriate setting, but it's not in a physics class. And that kind of thing is something that I'm going to be watching for. She promised me she'd get out the hook when No, I have practiced immigration law way in the past. And I was very active in the immigration debate and cast a no vote against Ronald Reagan's compromised immigration bill because it gave 3 million illegal aliens permanent status and citizenship in this country, and I thought he made a mistake in that regard, and I voted against it.
Change that, I understand it's something for the Supreme Court. How can we address that? How can we change that? How can we stop that?
The point of the base of your question is the automatic citizenship if you're born physically on U.S. soil, which, by the way, could be Guam, or it could be Marianas, it could be Puerto Rico, or it could be the Virgin Islands. is a great debate over whether it's actually statutory or it was judicial activism that propelled the idea that the baby born here is a citizen. I think that the constitutional amendment that's going to be required to fix the problem should simply say that one parent must be a permanent resident of the United States in order for that citizenship to attach. I see the problem. And again, remember, we could build the wall between the United States and Mexico 30 miles high. And with all due respect, because of our way of life and our first principles, there'll still be people trying to figure out how to cheat to get in. And you can't blame them. Yeah, I like that piece of what America's all about. It's just that you should not get the spoils of the system without being legal. Because if we give benefits to those who came directly by breaking the law, or indirectly by virtue of parents who broke the law, then we're encouraging more illegal immigration. And that's exactly what has happened. There's now 20 million undocumented workers here because Ronald Reagan's bill encouraged more to come. And now it's food stamps and it's all the rest of the stuff that goes with all that. So, but I don't think we change it. It's possible to change it with a congressional act. I think it would be challenged. I think there are constitutional issues there, so I think it has to be a constitutional amendment. But I wouldn't go so far as to say you have to be a citizen, or both parents have to be citizens. You have mixed marriages, you have from the wars, many stories of the Greatest Generation where the war bride was French or she was from England and never did take citizenship here, but a baby was born as a result to the GI who was a citizen. So I think that the constitutional amendment should be that one birth parent has to be a legal resident of the United States in order for that citizenship to attach. And that to me is a little bit of a compromise, but I think it's first principle. I think that America could buy that and we could solve that particular problem quickly. I think that amendment would pass the states within about 10 weeks if it were put on the ballot. And I think the same thing is true of term limits now. I'm a very strong advocate for federal term limits. I think that we should limit members of Congress to 18 years. That's 3 Senate terms and or 9 House terms, and you can't do more than a total of 18 in either body. And I think that I go further now, and you're going to think I'm really nuts. I go further. I'll ban C-SPAN, live coverage of Congress, and I think that's important because it doesn't keep the press out of covering the Congress, but it gets us back to first principles. What's the first principle? Remember, when you go to Congress, or you go to the state legislature, and you go in your blue shirt and your red tie, or if you're a lady in yellow dress and a bright flourished neck piece, and you're reading your speech that your staff wrote, and you won't yield to your friend for a question because you'll be embarrassed because you know they're against what you're saying to the folks back home on C-SPAN. So there's no longer any debate. There's no debate in our legislatures in this country anymore. Which means when the court has to decide the argument between what the legislative branch did and what the executive branch did to administer it, there's no intent spread on the record of what the words mean, so the courts can't make a decision, so they get to be activists, right? We criticize courts because of their guessing about what the law should be. So you think I'm a little nuts to say ban C-SPAN, but you get my point, that it's all a theatricalization of the process. And that's something I'd like to see America come to grips with. You might even want a presidential election to be limited to 60 days. Thank you all very much. Everybody enjoy yourself today. Thanks for having me. I've got to go campaign now.
Thank you so much, Hal. That was a great informative speech. We need to have our friends, our neighbors, our relatives all to hear your words. Thank you, Hal.